Geothermal energy is energy you can rely on. You can put an industry based on geothermal. Cost of drilling, which is about what, $6 million for a geothermal well. And that is, I would say, minimum if you haven't encountered any geological problems. The kind of fluids that we deal with at the Olkaria geothermal field.
Yes.
The lake is a pond. We are drilling up to 3 kilometers vertically. There's also tectonic activity. These lakes have been rising.
Welcome back to this other episode of the Energy Post podcast. For those of you who followed last week's discussion, we were here with Dr. Anna Mwangi, and today we again continue right here, same set, with again Dr. Anna Mwangi. Welcome on set.
Thank you so much.
And last week we talked about her journey, how she discovered geology, and of course explored into how she found her way into KenGen. For those of you who remember the story of energy in Kenya, for a long time we relied on hydro generation. And that went up to a point when we realized that we needed more to power this nation that was really growing, thereabout around the year 2000. It is upon that the country chanced into what they called geothermal energy, at which point many people doubted this story. Our first successful geothermal well was drilled in 1952. It took a long time until 1981 before we were able to bring on board a power plant into this country. Today, that story has grown to about 754 megawatts of geothermal. That's by KenGen. Of course, there are others also playing in that field, almost inching as close to 1 gigawatt mark of geothermal energy. The big story about geothermal is that it is capital intensive. And therefore, for you to get into it, you must have that lesser precise science. That is what then guides you into where to drill, how to drill, and therefore know how can we maximize our people and our resources to bring out the biggest output in terms of steam. The people who guide us towards that journey are none other than the geologists. And we are here today with Dr. Anna Mwangi to talk to us exactly about that story.
We want to delve just straight into how we started from last week and how we get to actually just understand. First question I would ask is, how critical is the work that you do, geophysics, in deciding where KenGen invests in geothermal development?
Geologists are critical in the geothermal development. The reason being is that I'd like to say geologists first give information, and information that is absolutely critical in de-risking the process. One, because from surface geology, you can't really tell much what is in the subsurface. So if you employ these different methodologies, use the geophysics method, use the geochemistry method, use the geologist, we are able to tie in a complete picture. And that complete picture is what we call a conceptual model. We like buying houses, even off plan. And what you go, they have a model development, and you can choose, oh, I want to be in this neighborhood. Oh, maybe I want to change from this one. Those considerations, because you have a model. So that's what we do. And if you want to avoid the process, then you'll be ready to spend money. And I don't think there's anybody, even the billionaires, would want to spend money and in a risky process, or do what you can call maybe drilling blindly. And if you compare the cost of drilling, which is about what, $6 million for a geothermal well, and that is, I would say, minimum if you haven't encountered any geological problems, up to 3,000 meters. And a fraction or about 10% of that is what you would use to actually do years of exploration. What would you want to do? You would want to do a proper geoscience work to enable you to understand the system, and also to enable you to de-risk your process, which is also ensures the drillers to get the success that they want. Remember, even when drilling, we are getting data, because what we have initially is a model. And when you drill vertically and when you drill directionally, you're getting output in terms of cuttings in the surface. Geologists, now that's what we call borehole geology. Geologists come and study that rock profile and are able to reconstruct. If you like a black forest cake, You can see the number of layers. You can see where, I know our good friend Sulai is a baker.
Yeah.
You know, you can find intricate hidden things in there, different colors. So same thing with this earth subsurface. Sometimes you find structures that are terminating, others that are intersecting, and you're able to get that information while you're drilling. So every time we have a drilling process, our geologists are there. And the information that we gather from there improves our conceptual model, because now we have subsurface information, not only in terms of the materials that we're recovering, but also the temperature profiles with depth.
Right.
And that makes me calibrate my geophysics model, the image. I can be able to put the temperatures on the images. Remember the X-ray?
Yes.
Then you're able to get a more realistic picture.
I want to understand why Olkaria, Embu, and feel free to talk about other geothermal sites.
Yes.
But what makes Olkaria really special in terms of geothermal exploration?
Well, Olkaria, our history, of course, is pre-independence, because when the colonial government was here, it identified that site. And I think the Italians are the ones to first to have steam drive a turbine back in the early 1900s. So that means it was identified as an area which is a hydrothermal system. Why that specific site? Because possibly it was remote at the time, and also the fact that now there were new things, steam engines were there, and now they were able to know there's a power plant, for example, in Landerello that would run on steam from the subsurface. And so I think that is what that may have generated interest for Olkaria. But Olkaria also being a unique ecosystem, in the morning, and actually being called Hell's Gate, the locals, the Maasais, because of very strange happenings around there. It's steam in the morning and it's forming like a ghost figure. Of course, you'd associate it with our active imaginations as Africans. I would say they are devils there. Sonekai hells also talk about devils. So the hells get the activity, that heat activity, generated surface interest that there's heat here.
Okay.
And I think to be able to convert that to energy, and by the fact that in 1981, of course, that's modern day, but the development of that field has been long, but it has also helped the world to understand high temperature geothermal systems. For example, the first 2 wells that were drilled, they were drilled in areas that almost look like here in terms of the carpet, like reddish,
Yes.
where you have the minerals hematite that shows high heat activity. So why not drill there? Let's drill here and drill the other place. We know very well at the surface we getting the temperature. But now that when the wells did not discharge, then you're able to go back to the drawing board and say, I don't
Right.
understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Until you understand those the outflow zones, because water will always run from high heat to the zones of low heat and low pressure.
So you're talking about 1952 when we had those first wells.
Yes.
So you're going to them at places where it is not really high intense.
Yes,
So
but
then,
the surface indication from your
Yes.
eyes,
Yeah.
you see there's activity happening. But that's not the case for if you want to exploit geothermal for high temperature systems. I'll give you a very good example of the domes field. When we were doing surface exploration there and we were doing electromagnetics, there was no surface activity. Yeah, in fact, it's just the goats,
Why?
the cows, the manyatas, and the bushes, the nice acacias. Nothing much. But you would see geothermal grass. That was one indicator. Would be like, yeah, there must be something. There must be something here. So we used to say in what's my fellow geologists, geophysicists who retired, Tom Boyer and Elvis would say, hapa kuna kitu.
Yeah.
Hapa kuna kitu. So even when you do exploration, you have an indication, but there's no surface manifestation. And that's where we have some of the powerful wells. So that helps you decode that what you see is not necessarily as high heat. What you see as high heat is not at the surface, not necessarily meaning that you have your heat source right below. No. Yeah. So that is why it is important to carry out science. And sometimes it's also very interesting for geophysics. You do a profile, you can see high heat, you drill and you don't get the heat, but you get all the temperature minerals there, but they are undergoing reversal. So they leave an imprint of when it was hot some many years ago. And then now we are no longer hot.
Many
but
years,
the
like
imprint,
how many years?
and geological time, we've talked about maybe at 1,000 or
Years.
more. Yes, because the rift is quite old. It's
Talk about the
2
rift
million
because
years.
Bulgaria sits in the Rift Valley. So
It's in the Rift
the
Valley.
entire of it is geothermal active.
Yes. And that process has been happening for millions of years. So for what we see is a breaking of a continent. So it's an active rift. And that is why the Longonot, the oil carriers, the Menengai, they're indicators of the volcanoes as you see them, they're indicators of an active volcanic system because of a divergent boundary. It is now more active in the Western Rift, the Ugandan side, because for the Kenyan part of the rift is the activity is not as much. It used to be, it's not as much because it encountered a craton, which is called the Tanzanian craton, one of the oldest rocks at the beginning of time, an Achaean rock system that it couldn't penetrate. So now the initiation is mostly on the western arm of the East African rift. So that is why the heat is ever present and the recharge is not local. It's not from the lake.
Yeah.
Yes, it is coming from the Aberdares and also from the Mao.
And we'll talk about that as
Yes.
part of the myths we are seeing around geothermal.
Yes.
So are you saying that you're going to see a lot of activity towards Uganda in terms of geothermal exploration?
Yes, because we and they are actively doing that. Uganda is has been doing a lot of exploration, mainly because they are endowed. They have minerals, they have petroleum, so they have applied a lot of these methods, geophysics, and actually they do better than us in terms of their natural resource management and mapping because they have a national database that you're able to check and able to invite investors to see. So they have really all the data sets required, something that for Kenya we need to improve on and ensure we have data present
Right.
for especially for the geothermal fields.
So there have been stories around Naivasha
Yes.
that over the last, I think, very few months, not more even a year old, there's been the rising of Lake Naivasha
Yes.
and moving into people's houses. And the stories down there is that the activities at the Olkara geothermal fields are the ones causing this. As a geologist, what did you say about that?
That one is a bit far-fetched. First, we do draw water from the lake, and that water we use it for drilling. So, and we have a permit with the WRA. So I think the accusation maybe if the any was credible would be we are depleting the water, but we're within the water budget of our license within the WRA.
Yes.
So I would be surprised to see that we have a connection with the lake and our geothermal activities. And in fact, if there was a connection, I can assure you that lake would be dry within months or even not months, because the kind of fluids that we deal with at the Olkara geothermal field,
Yes.
the lake is a pond.
They built up over millions of years.
The lake is a pond. It's not even a fraction. That's why we use it for drilling activities. And you're drilling one well. So, and mostly even our ponds, we have the Lake Ngari in Olkaria.
Yes.
We use that for drilling. So we are able not to draw so much from the lake. So if there was an accusation, I think it will be depleting rather than, and because we pump from the lake. If there was an interconnection between the two, because this is very shallow, we are drilling up to 3 kilometers vertically, and we are producing from 1,200. And this lake is what, 90 meters deep? And it's at what, 1,800 elevation average?
Yes.
So there's no connection. Yeah. And if there was a connection, then we'll be talking about very serious changes in the lake.
In terms of depletion, but in terms of the water we get that now forms the steam basin or carrier, the reservoir, where does that water come from?
The water comes from very far. And that is why our reliance on hydro changed, or we do not over-rely on our hydro power systems, but mostly on geothermal as our baseload. Because when there's a drought, geothermal we don't notice because our hydrology or our hydrogeology is coming from as far as the Aberdares and also the Mao. through the listric faults. And we have a fraction on the axial faults, the ones that are running across the rift. So this is deep waters, and if you were to do even the isotope study, our waters are not local. They're not from meteoric water. They are coming from deep recharge. And that is why you find us, for example, we have adopted the Enosupuke forest. KenGen, what's KenGen business in
Greening those kind of
greening
forests.
those areas? Because that's where our recharge is coming from. KenGen has an interest in the Aberdares. It has an interest in the Mao, because those catchment zones are not only important for the local and for our local hydrology, but also for our deep recharge of our geothermal systems. Yes, and they are water towers, meaning that it's our lifeline as a country. Yes.
So someone might ask, within many years, might there come a time where this steam is going to end or disappear?
If we destroy our catchment zones, but we will not feel it over time. I'd give or take 10 years, 15 years for us to start seeing the negative changes. That is why it is important for the Mao to be forested, for the Aberdares to be forested. And also, there's a connection with the lake. The lake is the lowest elevation. That is why you find, if you are the rally, Safari Rally, you may have been battling the water around the Moi South Lake. Because that water is coming as far as Kinungi, trying to find its way to the lake. So the lake is the basin. And so we need to protect the basin. If you look at that water, the way it was coming down, it's full of sediments. Or soils. In agriculture, they call it soils, but the geologists, the sediments. So it will going to pack. And if it packs, over time, you're reducing the volume the basin can hold, the water. So the water fraction will be minimal. But where is this water going to go? Because it's going to the lower elevation. It will go to the people's houses. That is one reason. We are doing agriculture in our places where their catchment zone. Then there's soil erosion. I loved our second president, because he used to coin this term, "Momonyoko wa udongo." Yes, you need to go back to those days and preserve our soils so that they don't all enrich the lake. Yes, and also there's also tectonic activity. These lakes have been rising. Naivasha is not unique. We have Lake Bogoria. You have seen what has happened in Lake Baringo, the Turkana, even the Victoria. So there's, because we are the rift, there's some sort of uplifting, or there's the rising lake levels observed consistently in these lakes. That's a geological phenomenon also that we need to study. So in terms of that local change in Lake Naivasha, it's something that you can trace to other lakes. But also the human effect is seen, because even you look at the color of the water, it's full of the soils.
In brief, how would you describe geothermal energy to Wanjiku, who probably does not know what you're talking about? What is geothermal energy?
So geothermal energy is natural, in that we have, we like mvuke, we have steam, and this steam is coming from the underground, the subsurface. And if you have a pressure cooker, I can explain it in the analogy of a pressure cooker. If you're cooking with a pressure cooker, you just need a little heat. And if you remove the pin, after some time, if there's water in the pot, it shoots up with high pressure. So we have pressure cooker zones, pressure cooking zones on top of these magmas that are providing heat. Magma is molten rock that is hidden beneath. If it erupts, it becomes lava and becomes a nice volcano and dries up. But if it is hidden in there, it loses heat by heating up the surrounding environment. So the water coming in through this deep fault is getting heated up and stored by because there is a nice ceiling of a cap rock. So or some nice mud, kama nyungu tu, alafu it's inside there. So if you drill, it's like when you're removing the pin from a pressure cooker. And now that is the science of finding these areas. The engineering comes in the drilling and channeling that steam to a power plant. And it is a turbine that is coupled to a generator, and you have farm power. The difference with solar is that this is Geothermal energy is energy you can rely on. You can put an industry based on geothermal. But a day like today, it's cloudy.
Yeah.
So what happens to your solar power? So what happens to your industry? It will not be running. So that's a difference. So we need more of this
Baseload geothermal.
baseload geothermal, because we can be able to base our development off of that energy.
You mentioned that a well takes about 600 to 700,000 Kenya shillings. No, 700 million.
Yes, about
600.
5 million, 6 million US
6
dollars.
million USD. That's
Yes.
counts to about 700 million Kenya shillings
Yes.
for a single well.
One.
Yes.
Yes.
What is this single well, and how many do we need to form a power plant?
So we don't just need production wells. So for KenGen, for example, we have 330 geothermal wells. So you can imagine the investment KenGen has done in geothermal. So you need production wells. First, you do, when geoscientists were done with our work, we want to test whether our conceptual model is correct. So we do exploration wells, then we do appraisal wells. Then if they all pass through the test, we go to production.
Yes.
So once you have your production wells, you will also need reinjection wells, because geothermal is green process. All this water you're getting, you will need several Lake Naivashas to hold that water.
Yes.
So the best thing is you recover that water from the power plant and reinject it back into the
soil.
system. And so our fluids also come in two phases. When you get it from the well, the production well, you have what we call brine. If you've been at the geothermal
Yes.
spa, the water looks blue. It's not because of the sky, it's because of the minerals in it.
Okay.
And that is one proof that we are not tapping water from the lake. Otherwise, the
same
lake water
color
would
would
also
be-
be blue.
Yes.
So our water is different. That's why it is blue in color, because it has a lot of silica, and that's what is good for your skin. So once we recover that portion, which is about maybe 80%, we take it back to the ground immediately nearby. So it recharges the system. The steam component is piped to a power plant. And after running the turbine, condensed and it's called reinjection, and put back again in the ground. So we have two types of reinjection: hot reinjection and cold reinjection. So that makes the process green. So you have your electricity, and you have your production wells, reinjection wells, and then you have your zebras and giraffes enjoying the environment,
Yes.
as you also get energy for the nation.
So what role did you, or the work that you do, play in the establishment of the geothermal spa?
It's very interesting because we also have not done it alone. We've had partners learning from them. You see, for example, I studied in America. We've been having a good collaboration with Iceland
Yes.
and New Zealand, and these countries that have geothermal exploitation, Italy. So, and our technologies also are borrowed, like from also Japan. So, during the 6 months courses, we have many of our participants going to Iceland. So Iceland, they have the Blue Lagoon. And so wondering how come we can't have one here. So through the generation of the KenGen, I usually call it the KenGen alumni. Yeah, people have been there before us.
Yeah.
The concept came to make a geothermal spa, and it was actualized because you can also use geothermal for tourism, for example. I mean, when there was COVID and there's nothing much to be done, our local tourism also really helped us to be able to sustain ourselves, and also possibly for our mental wellness. So the geothermal spa is a good relaxation place, and by us being able to identify the suitable places to drill production wells, that means we're able to obtain the brine,
Yes.
which is now sort of diverted to a pool, just a small fraction of it, and people can enjoy. You can see it's usually very hot. You actually have to cool it down for it to be in the main pool. And then from there, it is done a cold reinjection and cleaned out every other time. So my team, entire team of the geoscience fraternity, are responsible for the drilling of any well in Olkaria, advising where to drill, the how to drill, and then we work in collaboration with the drilling team. So, and we do this through well siting. There's a well siting committee that advises on where to drill and where to do more makeup wells for example. Yeah. So the team is quite good. And also in disposal of the fluids. This blue water, as you see, we can't just leave it in the surface. It would pollute the environment. So that's why we have to take it back where it came from to heat up again, and we recover it for another process, another round, and another round of activity.
Just give me the process of geothermal siting, first of all. Because I know if I look at the wells that people have done in Olkaria, many of those well ads are in very remote areas. Before these people bring their rigs and start drilling,
Yes.
how does it feel? What is the activity before that? And you people walking in and fighting with the snakes and wild animals,
Yes.
picking rocks. How is that initial activity like for you?
Yes.
And mostly for the women who are there.
Yeah, it's a very interesting affair. So basically, there are no roads. In the beginning, it's just a bush, and in the bush, the Olkaria geothermal field is also hosted within the Hell's Gate National Park, part of it.
Yes.
And so the not just the national park, also even the areas KenGen owns, it also looks like a national park. So some of these areas that I find developed today, I remember them in my mind because it was such a hassle to get there. And there's the Olol Gorge,
Yes.
which you had also to cross. You see that road to Carrier 5?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's a classic, but it wasn't there. So you have to find your way to cross the gorge every other time at different locations to access the domes field.
Yeah.
And you're walking through thickets and bushes. And so you have to have a good safety team. And you, for example, walk in single profiles. You're not just walking in your PPE, but you're also carrying heavy equipment that is several hundreds of millions. Because I think our cheapest equipment is what, maybe 50 million. So it's also, an expensive equipment that you want to protect also.
So
With your
definitely
life,
help
because
security.
yes. So it's not actually security from being stolen or anything, because anyway, you have to be a geophysicist to know how to operate. But I think it's from damage.
It gets
Yes.
broken.
Can you handle it? And some are very sensitive, which means you can't drop it. It has, because what it measures is precise information. So yeah, you carry that equipment and go to a point and you wait. Either if you've acquired in data, some you wait for an hour, others you leave and come back the next day to pick them.
Do you ever camp somewhere at night?
Unfortunately not, but we hire what you call the local guides, and they're able to keep the equipment secure, not just from people, but mainly from interference, also from the animals.
Yeah.
Sometimes we use salt in some areas, so we mix it with some clay, and then so that to ensure good contact with the ground. So some animals, especially the buffaloes, they'll
Come and
smell
lick the
salt.
salt.
They want to
Yeah.
come and find
Yes,
salt.
yes, yes.
So you have to make sure the area is cordoned off. And sometimes you make sure that they're not using pangas because they introduce cultural noise into the data set. Yes, but it has been a long journey. And not just in Olkaria field. Before, for example, Geothermal Development Company was created in 2009.
Yes.
We were in Menengai and all those fields up north, Pakasilali. It is the KenGen team that worked there, and of course with the support of the ministry. So they are the ones who are able to ensure or sort of put a figure into the megawatts, estimated megawatts that can come from those areas. So we have done quite some good, significant work
All right.
in determining geothermal fields in Kenya.
I think going forward as we wrap up, KenGen is targeting to go about 840 megawatts from the G2G strategy.
Yes.
And that should run to somewhere about 2034. From you, I'm sure you looked at these fields and you have some very clear mind at what the next touch points should be.
Yes.
So from your view, what does the future of geothermal look like for Kenya?
It's bright, but I think we need to remove what we call some hurdles in this journey. Because first, when, for example, KenGen was given this mandate, there was the need to fast track geothermal development. If you look at first drilling in 1950 and first power plant in 1981, is that the kind of track record we want to keep? So we have to set ourselves strict deadlines. As KenGen, which is also a company that is owned by government of Kenya, we have acquired a lot of capabilities in understanding and actually developing geothermal fields. So we should be we should be working in a collaborative way to ensure we understand these fields. Either we go do more studies, drill to get steam available at the wellhead for development. So if we're not having steam available at the wellhead, then I think this discussion has not taken off, because Kenya has the capability to actually develop geothermal fields, not only in Kenya, but also in Africa and beyond Africa.
Okay.
So we should bet on ourselves as a country, because what we need is the energy. So we shouldn't look far and wide. And the bottlenecks that are there, I think they can easily be moved around, and we use the resources that we already have. And especially for the human resource, I think we've done very well. I think we should sweat that more, including also the technologies that we have invested in. Yes, I take Kenya as also KenGen as Kenya.
Yes.
Yes, because in the World Geothermal Congress, we bid as Kenya, and actually it was an African bid. So our mandate goes way outside
Outside
of
Kenya.
Yeah, Kenya, yes.
Of course, beyond Africa.
Beyond Africa, yes.
All right, but beyond electricity generation, geothermal does many things other than the spark.
Yes.
What are other benefits that we can get from geothermal?
There's a very good nexus between agriculture and geothermal energy. So especially for greenhouse farming, you can use this heat to heat up greenhouses. I know we'd wonder, in Kenya, we don't have a problem with temperature, but apparently it gets very cold at night.
Like
So
Limuru, where
like
you are.
the Muru, and also even in Naivasha, at
Yes.
night the temperatures come down. So we can use the heat, run geothermal fluids,
Yes.
and maintain the temperatures at the greenhouses, and that makes the plants go 2 or 3 times faster, and that also saves on costs. And we've had Osirian, for example, invest in that and be able to generate. KenGen is able to provide steam to Osirian to do that. So that's a direct benefit, especially when you see Kenya is an agricultural economy.
Yes.
There's also tourism, as you've said, from the geothermal spas and wellness centers. There's also other things like hatcheries. They're coming in small scale, especially in Neburu. There was a plant there for pyrethrum drying. I think we should scale up the utilization of direct heat. And in particular, we can use leather tanning. You can use other applications to help us, first of all, create employment and also do some value additions. Yeah. So if you have steam intensive industries, you have electricity provision, which is green, for some processes, and also ensure that we are utilizing the byproducts that are coming. Especially, I look at it like if you were to, with the next to the food security, you can be able to dry foods and they have a longer shelf life. So that heat is present and available. So, and we have the energy park where we can have that, some industries set up and be able to utilize the heat directly.
Is it true that the spa water makes your skin smooth and you look younger?
Yes, yes.
Oh, why is that?
You wouldn't have to known that I've worked in KenGen for 18 years, would you?
No.
Then it's working. Yes, but because there's a scientific explanation to that. The water has some sulfur in it, and sulfur is a good it's a therapy, a good therapy for the skin, because it's like an antiseptic. And also silica. For us girls, we know if you have a product that has silica, it's usually pricey. So here you're getting silica for free. So it has a nice colloidal feel. So that tends to smoothen your skin. Yes. And of course the heat treatment, if you have aches and pains, by the time if you take a swim, you'll feel much better. And it's a practice that has been done in, for example, the European countries like Italy, also in Japan, and other places. They have this spa, and you can see they live long. Yes. So we should adopt that as.
I think you wanted to be a doctor. Now you are a confirmed dermatologist.
Yes.
And a teacher too.
Yes.
Your examples and illustrations are classic and very simple.
Thank you.
It's very easy to just understand what we would think is jargon to us, but in simple terms, you make it very simple for us to understand. So as we wind up, we know you are the chair lady of Pink Energy Geothermal chapter.
Yes.
What advice would you give a young woman who wants to venture into geoscience sector, maybe within the energy sector as well? Because we know you're very passionate about mentorship and also women empowerment as well.
Yes.
So what would that advice be to them?
I would say go for it, definitely. They should have passion. And it's good before you start, you ensure that you, for example, come to KenGen or any other energy company that is dealing with geothermal for an attachment or internship. It gives you a glimpse onto what these careers are like. You'll also get to meet the women who have excelled in this field. And so such conversations help. For a young woman, what I would say is planning. You plan your studies. Of course, I can imagine if when I'm expectant, sometimes you may, in your 9th month, it might not be advisable to go climb a hill. But, having an employer like KenGen and with an initiative like Pink Energy, we're able to take care of our women to thrive in their careers because it's not just the field work, but there's also the desktop work, a lot of desktop work that happens to be able to analyze and process and analyze data set and even write reports. So there's a lot that that is to unpack. And so having a team that is balanced and that is representative, that is inclusive, it really brings about synergies. For example, I noticed women were creative, hence we're very good in interpretations. And so the men also are very good with analytics. So when you have a mixed team, you have a very rich conversations, especially around the results that we obtain. So it's a good balance. Of course, for the men, I don't think it's a challenge. But for a young girl, I think if you have the passion, it's a very good field to get into. But also as a country, I think, and for me, being in the governing council for Geological Society of Kenya, we need to do more. And we're trying to get to talk with the engineers, the Institution of Engineers in Kenya, because there's a gap, for example, between the geology field and the engineering field, so that we create opportunities and solve problems. For example, when geologists see the flooding situations in Kenya, they almost like told you so. But you see, we need to ingrain geology as the first before you do other developments, whether it's in construction or infrastructure. We need to ensure that we in place this geology within the spaces that geologists should be. And so that will create opportunities for not only those young girls and also for the boys, for the Kenyans, the Kenyan youth, so that there's more creation of employment and value addition. Yes, and sustainable development for our country.
Yeah, so that person who is wondering, they see Dr. Anna everywhere. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's a scientist. She sits on boards, she sits on committees in different councils. How do you do it? How do you manage to balance all this and still remain sane?
Same. Well, let me say this. I'm driven by passion, and also I've been quite around for some time. I mean, 18 years. So definitely there's that accumulation of knowledge. And I am also driven by change. I want to see change for the better. So that drives me. So I happen to be a very self-driven person. And I'm also a very good team player. So what I do, I don't just do it alone. I am in a team. So that makes it easier and interesting. And of course, I also have a child who somehow wants to be a pilot, but also is a small geologist in the making. So we have a lot of scientific conversations with them. And also young people in mentoring the next generation, which I think we all should do. So I must say maybe is, I don't want to say work-life balance because I don't think anybody ever balances it. But I think is that my priorities. I prioritize whatever is important, you prioritize. So I think I prioritize things that will have a bigger impact. And that is why I am everywhere, I guess.
All right. Thank you very much. And this discussion, of course, has been deep. as deep as 3,000 meters beneath the ground, because we are talking to none other than the geologist herself, who understands the rocks by their names, by character, and what they can bring, and all that leads to the farm power that you receive at home and also in your industries. This has been the Energy Post podcast, where all the big conversations on energy happen right here in KenGen and of course across Africa. This discussion continues with you on the comment section. Watch, listen, and share with your friends. Keep it here. This is the Energy Post podcast. My name is Frank.
And as you've heard today, power is driven by science, data, and leadership. We'll see you in the next episode of the Energy Post podcast. Thank you for joining in.